How's it going, everyone? Today we have a story time of a spoiled kid who is so entitled that he genuinely thinks that he owns the school. And to prove everyone wrong and to prove that he actually owns the school, he ends up destroying it. Yeah, this is one of the most insane stories I've told in a second. This kid might be one of the most spoiled kids of all time. And that's saying a lot since I've probably told over 1,000 stories about spoiled kids just like this kid. So with that being said, leave a like in the video right now to claim your free nothing. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, or follow it and rate it 5 stars if you're listening on Spotify. And with that being said, let's just jump right into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who submitted this story, we're going to call him Alex. So anyways, Alex remembers this day back from his day in high school. And there was a kid back in Alex's high school, and we're going to call him Brock. So Brock was the total epitome of the spoiled rich. He was total epitome of spoiled rich kid syndrome. So basically, Brock's parents were loaded from some tech startup. You know, one of those like companies that like gets a bunch of money, gets acquired, and ends up actually doing nothing. Yeah, I mean, basically, Brock's parents made a ton of money from some tech startup, and this kid, Brock, basically treated the school like his personal playground. And his parents donated huge sums of money just so Brock could get away with basically anything. Yeah, this is one of those situations where the parents make a lot of money, but the spoiled rich kid is kind of like, you know that meme where it's like our money or whatever? It's like, bro, it's like he treats it as if he made the money as well, which whenever I say stuff like this, I do want to make it really apparent that even if you make money, I'm not saying, oh, you're justified all of a sudden to, all of a sudden you're justified to do whatever you want, to, be super mean to people. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like, not only is he being super rude and a jerk, and it wouldn't be justified if he did quote unquote make this money, but in addition to that, in addition to everything I've already been saying, this kid is also, he didn't even make the money. He's just freeloading off of his parents. And somehow he thinks that makes him like the most impressive person on planet Earth. Total spoiled rich kid syndrome. Anyways, I want to give you a little bit of context of how bad this kid was. One of the first signs that Brock was an absolute spoiled rich kid was all the way back in freshman year. And this happened when Brock showed up to school in a chauffeured limo. Yeah, no, guys, I know you probably think that you have some wax in your ears, or you might be having sudden hearing loss or something. But fortunately, because sudden hearing loss would be pretty bad. So in some ways, fortunately, but in other ways, unfortunately, you heard me right. This kid, Brock, actually showed up to school every single day in a chauffeured limo, complete with a personal assistant who carried his backpack. This dude from day one was the biggest tool of all time, bro. Like, imagine actually showing up to your school with the audacity to show up with a freaking personal butler, dude. A personal butler. Like, are you serious right now? This kid genuinely thought that it would be super awesome to show up with a chauffeur and a butler to carry his backpack. So yeah, this kid Brock from day one got a crazy reputation as just being an insanely spoiled rich kid. This kid would complain loudly if the air conditioning in class wasn't set to his preferred temperature. Like, he literally would pick fights with people if it's like, I want it at 68 and you have it at 67, like blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Yeah, cue the 6'7" memes. I know. I really should have said, I wanted it at 69, but you wanted it at 6'7", just so my comment section would absolutely light up. And once he even had his dad call the principal. This is insane. Listen to this. He once even had his dad call the principal to demand a private thermostat in his homeroom classroom. One that was like remote controlled from an app that Brock controlled. So instead of like there being whenever anyone would go up, because he actually had that installed, I mean, his dad paid for it, his dad basically ran the school. So sure enough, he would just be in class and someone would be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go up and change the temperature to this. And then they would just see it like remotely go down, and they look down and Brock's on his phone readjusting the temperature. Like, this kid was genuinely next level insane. So it doesn't end there, right? There was a time back in the day where there was a science fair where basically everyone had to build their projects from scratch with household items. So this was, I don't know if you guys ever had a science fair back in the day at your school, but basically it was like, hey, it doesn't actually matter how cool this is. It just matters that you put in effort. And some people, there's a very common paper mache volcano, which I know is super common, but to me will always be so cool. Like using like the combination of baking soda and something. It's been a while since I've been in a 7th grade science class. It's probably been over 10 years at this point. Give me a break. I forgot how that worked, but I always remember thinking that was absolutely so cool. But really the point of this wasn't to have the coolest, experiment, whatever. And it's so funny. I remember back in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, whenever I would do something like this, like one of these science fair things, it was something where, I would try my best. And you'd have the kids who came in. There'd be the projects that obviously the kids made because they'd be total crap, bro. Like, they would be awful. My projects would be complete crap. And then you would just see some like Princeton PhD scientist level project. I'm like, oh yeah, buddy. You're sitting over in the corner picking your nose playing Clash of Clans. I'm sure you made that and not your 2 PhD Princeton scientist parents who are like, my child needs to get into Yale and I'm going to make sure that happens since day 1 in kindergarten. Like, I'm totally certain that wasn't just them doing this project. But anyways, right. Brock, okay. Dude, this is so nuts. This kid, Brock, is actually the most spoiled rich kid ever. I think I'd go insane if I went to school with him because Brock hired a team of engineers. Well, his dad, really, hired a team of engineers to create a fully functional robot that won first place. And here's the thing. The teachers were supposed to demote projects that clearly weren't from the kids, right? And they made this very clear, saying that, like, hey, we're not just grading you on, like, how objectively cool this is, but if we know for a fact that this was done by not you, and just done by your parents, or you paid someone to do it. Oh my God, someone would pay someone to do it? I wonder who that would be. Wink, wink, nod, nod, Brock here. Yeah, but, since his dad runs the entire place, basically through donations, I'm sure that the teachers, the principals, and the staff were like, you know what? I want to have a job. I want to get paid. I want to be able to feed my kids. You know what? He's going to win first prize. So yeah, here's the funniest thing too. When Brock was like won first prize, he was supposed to present in front of the entire school. So some of the kids that were a little bit upset would raise their hands and ask him questions about how it worked. And he would just shrug and he said, my money built it. That's all you got to know. Like, money speaks. Like, money is science. And you could see the pain on the teachers' faces as they just had to like take this. They're like, bro, this is not why I got into teaching. Like, this is totally unacceptable. But basically, it was like the teachers all didn't like Brock, but the administration was on their butts to make sure that they didn't do anything to make his dad upset. So that happened freshman year. Him riding up in the private limo, the butler, getting the personal thermostat installed, and then the freshman year science fair, completely rigging that and honestly being super blatant about it. But when freshman year runs around, there was another fiasco. Sophomore year. So sophomore year, Brock threw a massive party at his mansion and invited basically the whole school. So yeah, I mean, this wasn't like a small party for a few groups of friends. This was almost everyone got an invitation. You might be thinking, wait, I thought like, Brock wants to hang out with the peasants, bro. Brock wants to hang out with the poor people, the serfs. No, bro was just looking for an opportunity to absolutely flex. I mean, Buddy would roll up in a limo. He would show that he's totally bribed and controlled the whole school. But you know what? He's not done yet. He's not flaunted his personal wealth at home yet. So what a great opportunity. Here's the thing, though. Most kids actually did end up going because, like, I'm not going to lie. If I knew all my friends were going, even if I didn't like the guy, like, there's so many people there and it's a mansion party. Dude, I'll be completely honest with you. Yeah, I will be pulling up to the mansion party. Like, if I'm being completely honest, I am absolutely going to pull up to that thing because probably the food's great. It's really fun to hang out there. Even if for like a little bit of time, you got to deal with Brock. Like if I'm being honest, that probably is totally worth it. Anyways, though, so he invites all these people to, his mansion, but only after bragging about how his parents bought him a yacht for his birthday. So at the party, he trashed his own game room for fun. Like he had this massive, by the way, multiple floors, the biggest house that they've ever seen in their town. This wasn't like Upper East Side, New York City. This wasn't like Greenwich, Connecticut. This was in some kind of already somewhat wealthy area. This was a pretty normal area, but this house was it was custom built. When Brock's parents had a crazy exit from their tech investment, I guess they've lived in this area for a while. So they basically said, screw it. We're going to build our own our own mega mansion. Let's be real. There's no mini involved here. Anyway, so they had a whole entire game room. And this guy literally trashed his own game room for fun. And he was laughing about it the whole time. And he basically said, quote unquote, "Daddy will just buy me new stuff." This completely foreshadowed his destructive tendencies, which by the title of the video, Destroys the School, I'm not exaggerating. It's not clickbait. It's a real title. It's a real story. And this is just a little bit of foreshadowing that this guy thinks he's literally a god, thinks that he's next level because he's so spoiled and entitled, but is also quite destructive. Anyways, oh yeah, let's not forget about the school play fiasco. So there was a school play their sophomore year, and Brock, of course, demanded to have the lead role without auditioning. This was a pretty big deal. So it was a sophomore, the sophomore class, there was a big thing of they had a big play. And it was it was big for the freshman year they had a play and junior and senior, sure. But at the school culture, the sophomore year play was the big thing. I don't know. I feel like at a lot of other places, it's probably by high school, it's just it doesn't really matter what grade, but it's actually very popular at the school to do a play. So each grade had their own play. And for some reason, it wasn't the senior. I feel to me, it'd make more sense. The senior play is the one that's the coolest. For some reason here, it's the sophomore year play. I don't get it. Whatever, right? It's one of their quirks of their school. Anyways, it was a really big deal to get the lead role. Everyone would think about it. Anyone who was really into theater and everything like that, they would be wanting that lead role for the longest time. Basically, Brock came in and demanded that he got the lead role without even auditioning, claiming acting classes from a Hollywood coach made him superior. Yeah, buddy literally just went on Zoom, paid $500 to some Hollywood coach, probably was on his phone the whole time and just said, "Yo, dude, I got coaching from the best guy in Hollywood. You better put me up on, you got to make me the superstar for this play, man. You already know." And he basically argued that, this one acting class he paid for made him superior. And so once again, as I said before, the school here is basically completely corrupt. So when the actual play comes around, he doesn't show up to any of the practices. He barely shows up to one. He's on his phone and he doesn't know any of his lines. It's going to be a complete disaster. By the way, everyone else in the play has worked really, really hard and everyone's really excited because this is a big thing culturally. So the subscriber at this point is he's pretty upset and a lot of his friends are pretty upset. But when the actual day for the play comes around, he completely forgets all of his lines on opening night. And he ends up blaming the script. And he's like, "Bro, this script is so dumb. That's why I can't remember it because it's so stupid." Yeah, so basically, he didn't study his lines at all. And somehow he's able, in his mind, to convince himself that the real problem was the script. So the whole show's an absolute disaster. But once again, this kid has a little bit of a history, the spoiled kid, of just going into absolute rage mode. So this whole thing, he blames the script and goes backstage and starts tearing up the props in an absolute rage. And this forces the show to stop midway through. So it's an absolute disaster. The drama club has to rebuild everything overnight for the next show as well. He basically said, "I quit. I'm not doing this. The show sucks, whatever." So they had to have someone sub in last minute. they basically had to like have the script with them because it was a pretty long script throughout the next showing, and they had to rush to recreate most of the props. So the next show, the next day was actually fairly good, all things considered. Yeah, this guy had the script with them, but everyone kind of knew the situation. Yeah, the props didn't look as good because they didn't have 3 months worth of time to prep, right? They had to remake stuff that day because in a rage, he went and destroyed everything. But you have to remember, this kid had no consequences. Brock had no consequences to his actions here because once again, his dad more or less runs the school. So building this up more, junior year, this kid, Brock, gets a brand new sports car for passing his driver's test, which, bro, if you're receiving like a sports car, I don't know exactly what kind of sports car this was, Lamborghini, probably not a Bugatti, it's a little much. What color is your Bugatti situation? But the fact he's getting a sports car for simply passing his driver's test, which let's be real for a quick second. What are the odds he probably just paid someone to take that test for him? Whatever. And basically, this kid would rev the engines in the parking lot just so everyone knew that he had this super fancy sports car, dude. Completely like disrupting like classes. So one day he quote unquote accidentally scratched a teacher's car. Huge quotes on accidentally. And Buddy said instead of apologizing, he left a wad of cash in the windshield and a note saying, "Buy a better one." So not only did this guy damage a teacher's property, probably just because he was driving around doing donuts, being an absolute jackbutt, right? But in addition, after damaging the car, faces no consequences. Sure, he didn't like not pay, which I guess is cool. But the fact that he left a note saying buy a better one is absolute psychopath behavior. And then there was also a charity drive incident. This kid destroys the school, but there's so much that happened leading up to it. So there was a charity drive incident where the school was collecting donations for underprivileged kids, right? Brock shows up to this, and it's like a whole event, whatever, and people are, they bring actual like money to it. They're signing up people. There's a bit of a fun run. It's a whole event. Like it's actually quite nice. The whole school comes together and it's a whole event. Brock shows up with a single-dollar bill. Yes, you heard me right. Mr. Super Rich Pants, Mr. I have all this money, shows up to this charity drive with a singular dollar bill. Which, by the way, like, if you couldn't really afford to bring something to the charity drive, it's fine if you show up empty pockets, right? Other people are going to be donating. And it's not the fact that he donated $1. There's nothing wrong with donating $1. Even if in theory you could donate more, I'm not going to hold against you if you make a decision to donate a certain amount, even if it's below your means, who cares? But he showed up with a single dollar bill to mock everyone. It wasn't the fact he showed up with $1. Like, as I said, I don't care how much money you're bringing. Like, it's just cool to donate it all. And if like you can only donate $1 reasonably, dude, totally fine. But he brought a single dollar bill mocking everyone else's contributions as quote unquote peasant change. And then he boasts about how his family could buy the whole charity if they wanted. And at this point, the whole student body was so fed up with this kid. Everyone in the student body was just so upset with Brock. They're like, they didn't like him before. They started to intentionally alienate him. So the tension started to grow because all the students were not hanging out with them. Brock was like the star quarterback in the lacrosse team or whatever that's called. I don't think it's actually called a quarterback, but you understand what I'm saying. But the whole team would basically play around him. Doesn't matter how much the coaches said or how much the teachers said, because the teachers couldn't, they'd have to listen to Brock and be like, guys, you got to hang out with them. But they weren't going out of their way to enforce it because they were like, dude, I totally get it. This kid sucks. He's the worst. But tensions started to escalate during a group assignment in history class. Basically where Brock refused to do any of the work. So put into a random assignment, a random grouping, and this kid, Brock, refuses to do anything. And he basically said that his future is set with a trust fund, so why should he bother? Imagine getting into a group project and you have such a spoiled, rich, entitled kid that they say that they're not going to do any of the work at all, simply because their future is already set. They have a massive trust fund, so why should they bother? He ended up paying off his group members with a gift with gift cards to carry him. And, at some point, the teacher, if you're in that group, it's like, hey, man, I have to do my work either way. I need to get a good grade. I need to try. If this kid is going to bribe me with a gift card, he's bribing me to do something I'm going to be forced to do anyways, so why not? So this kid ends up bribing other kids with gift cards to quote unquote carry him. But that's when the teacher noticed. The teacher ends up calling him out. And basically, there's like one teacher, this history teacher, 10-year teacher, he's been around forever. I guess you can be tenured as a high school teacher, but you know what I mean. He's old, he's done, like he's had his good time in teaching. If he ends up getting fired, like whatever. So he's definitely one of the few people who didn't care. So he called him out in front of everyone, basically being like, bro, like you're not going to get a good grade on this because you didn't do anything. I saw everything. I know what you did. And this kid, Brock, starts like complaining, fighting back with him. But eventually he storms out and keyed the vending machine in his hallway out of spite. So just to like out of pure anger, remember this kid has a destructive streak to him. He just starts keying stuff randomly because he's just so angry and upset. Anyways, all the things I've told you have led up to the main event. Senior year. At my high school, there was something called Senior Prank Week, where basically all the seniors would come together and decide what the prank was going to be. It was never really encouraged by the school. If anything, they kind of looked the other way as long as it wasn't too destructive or too disruptive. It was kind of just like a funny thing people would do. But as you can probably tell, that like an ambiguous, not school-sponsored Senior Prank Week, that could honestly go pretty poorly. For me, it was always funny at my school. It was always good. I think during my senior year, it was the virus. I can't really say it on YouTube without them getting really, really upset at me for some reason. So I don't think we really were able to do that much. But anyways, it was Senior Prank Week, and Brock felt totally untouchable. And he decided to take it to the extremes. And he decided that what is the best way? What is the ultimate flex? He's already shown off his awesome mansion. He's already shown off his awesome car. He's already said that he could buy everyone. He's already talked about like his yacht or whatever. He's already showed everyone that he has complete power, complete money, whatever. What would be the ultimate show of power? What would be the ultimate flex? The answer here is by destroying his school. Because if he could destroy the school and get away with it, then he really owned it. If you own something, you can break it, right? That's his theory. That's his logic in his brain. So the subscriber has told me that a lot of this is just like stories he's told. Obviously, he doesn't have a direct POV here, but essentially, here's what happened. Brock felt completely untouchable, and he's going a little crazy at this point because he's like, oh, I got to destroy the school. It's the ultimate flex. So basically, he snuck into the school late at night, and with a crew hired, he literally hired a crew of like goons, bro, using fireworks, paint bombs, and a rented bulldozer. I don't know how he gets access to this stuff. Smashed through the gym walls, turning the place into a chaotic mess. Graffiti, flooded hallways, busted pipes. I mean, okay, destroyed windows. Yeah, sure, the school wasn't literally ash, but so much damage. Like hundreds, if not in theory, millions in damage. Because like if you destroy the plumbing, if you destroy the walls, fundamental architecture, bro, that is huge. And the subscriber, anyway, so the next day, the subscriber, Andrew, like, he gets, like, his mom says, hey, like, school's canceled today. And Andrew's like, dude, it's not snowing. It's not weather-related. What do you mean the school is canceled? She's like, we got a really cryptic email saying the school is going to be canceled for the next couple days and that we should be checking our emails. Super confusing, super weird. And essentially, right, he's like has no idea. So Andrew goes obviously on his phone, calls up one of his best friends, Ben, is like, dude, like why is school canceled? He's like, bro, I have the craziest story for you. I have an insane insider scoop who's like kind of friends with Brock, and Brock bragged about all this stuff, but he also doesn't really like Brock, but Brock doesn't realize, oh my God, you're not going to believe this. So sure enough, right, Ben tells Andrew about all of this. Andrew's like, dude, I don't believe you. And he's like, bro, I didn't think so either. And I'm still like not convinced. He's like, yo, I mean, we have school off today. School's a 10-minute walk. Do you want to meet halfway and go to the school? So Andrew, anyways, gets out of his house, meets Ben halfway, and they start walking down. And Andrew keeps asking questions to Ben of like, are you sure? And he's like, dude, I don't know, but this is what I've heard. And like, isn't it a little suspicious that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the school is just canceled? Like they're canceling for a couple days without any reason. It's obviously not snow day. They look around and it's beautiful out. He's like, it's not weather. Like, why would they cancel for multiple days out of nowhere? Anyways, they come up to the school and they see all these police cars. They see all of these like firefighters. They see all of these people, all these staff and administrators. And it's absolutely, and at this point, they're close enough to the school to see like a little bit, and it is insane. By the way, if you made it this far into the video, I'd like you to comment pillow down below. That's the secret word of the day, so I can see the names and the faces of people who made it this far into the video. I'm just looking at a pillow right now. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do so is just by watching these videos and watching them for a long time. So I like seeing the names and faces who've made it this far. If you want to support the channel even more, if you're on YouTube, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. And if you're on Spotify, make sure that you have followed the podcast and rated it 5 stars. Anyways, though, so sure enough, right, Andrew and Ben are there. They're just looking at the school, absolutely destroyed. I mean, the gym was demolished, and there was they couldn't see the extent of the damage. The majority of the school looked technically fine, but they were looking from the outside. If you actually looked inside, it was obliterated. It was so bad. It was insane, right? So anyways, they go back, Andrew, like they have a big group chat call, a lot of kids, they see other kids too, because they stand there for a while. They have nothing better to do, but they're just standing there for a bit. They're just looking at it, gaping. Like at one point, a police officer comes up and is like, boys, like you can stay here. You're technically not on school property. You can look in, but like, do not step on school property for your own sake. Like stay away from this. This is an active investigation. And like, if you're on school property, you might get wrapped into this, so just stay away. And they were like, yes, officer, totally get it. Do you have any idea what's going on? He's like, I really can't speak on this at the moment. And they're all looking at each other. And all of a sudden, like, Ben's like, hey, like, I think I might know more about this. And Andrew kind of looks at him like, yo, like, okay. And he's like, all right, son, like, now speak up. Were you involved? He's like, no, but I have like insider scoop. Can I speak about this? So anyways, Ben goes off. And is like a bunch of officers, whatever, is talking to a bunch of them. Andrew kind of fills in everyone else and they kind of learn about it. It's absolutely crazy. So this is where karma strikes back. The school security cameras were not properly destroyed. 1 or 2 of them were like knocked out or whatever. But while a lot of the plumbing was destroyed, walls were taken down, the electrical system somehow survived and the cameras made it. So when the footage was revealed, it somehow got leaked. And I don't know how. You know how this stuff goes, went to the police. It wasn't locked down properly. I think one of the school administrators was so upset that they just anonymously posted it online. It went viral. Not like millions and millions of views, but locally viral. And this was the first time the Brock's parents couldn't buy him out of this. The community backlash on this was massive. Huge lawsuits, and Brock was almost immediately expelled. The entire community was forced to like do service rebuilding and rebuild everything is destroyed. The classes were like held online, and I don't actually know the timeline of this. I don't know if this was pre the virus thing, and there was like, because like Zoom, Google Meet, all that kind of stuff almost came a little bit later. But they basically, I don't know if this happened before or after, but they had to do basically online classes, online school. And so they had to do the rest of classes online for the rest of the year. They were all doing kind of community service stuff. The school encouraged it, but they didn't force anything. They had to do a lot of rebuilding. And it got to a point where the damages were huge. All of this guy, Brock's quote unquote friends that were barely friends, barely at that point, right? Totally just did not totally ditched him. And basically left to a point where money couldn't fix this. The whole family actually, a little bit of time later, Brock said that his parents saw that the house went on the market. They were always out of town at this point. They held some high positions at local clubs or something like that. The parents were completely gone, out of the neighborhood, completely ditched the thing. They never saw Brock again. And the house has been on the market for a while. The house hasn't been sold because look, dude, if you have a house, if the average home price in a location is $500,000 and there's a random house for 25 M's, dude, that thing is never getting sold. And I think Brock's parents were like too full of themselves to realize that like, dude, you can't sell a house like this in this neighborhood for that price. It doesn't matter how cool it is. But they definitely had a second house. And no one really knew Brock to the point where they had him on, well, they had him on social media, but he wouldn't post. In fact, a lot of them got like blocked or something. So they don't know where he is today. To this point, he's never revisited. He's never reappeared. And now the school is in much better condition. It's a crazy story around their community. People will never forget how crazy this kid was. And they really never saw him again. And this is a situation where Brock was pushing the limits of like, how far can money take him? Like, how far can money take him? Or his parents' money, let's be real. And he figured out that, you know what? That was the limit. He hit the limit and that there's no going back.